While we have endured a painstakingly long process, all the reporting makes it seem like Carlos Correa will be a Met any day now. On the show, what I want to do is remind everyone that Carlos Correa is absolutely worth the wait. He's worth this contract the Mets are about to sign him to, because what he's about to do for this Mets team is transform them into a favorite to win the World Series this year.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, Carlos Correa is not quite a New York Met, but it feels like this could happen any day now. I know we've said that probably for about a week, but there has been a little bit of reporting that's come out. You had Ken Rosenthal on an Athletic podcast say that he does believe that Correa will be going to the Mets, and he'll be going on a very different contract than the one he previously signed. Now, that's an interesting report because we still don't really know exactly what that means. Is it a different contract in that there's all these clauses where if he doesn't play a certain amount of games, the Mets could get out of a couple of years of the deal? Is it just an entirely new deal? Were those original parameters, the 12 years, the $315 million, were those just, some stakeholders? And then once the Mets got, look under the hood with the medicals, it was never going to be that contract again. And they're working on a 7-year deal, an 8-year deal, a 10-year deal, a 5-year deal. We really don't know. And it's pointless for me to speculate and say, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 10-year, $300 million contract, even though that is a number that I have come back to a couple times now. The bottom line, though, is there's no other team entering the fray. There's no reporting of any breakup between negotiation between these two sides. A deal is imminent. So with that in mind, I just want to take that fan that's out there that has got frustrated with this process, that's not understanding why it's taken so long, that feels like this long amount of time just means that this is more and more of a risk to the New York Mets, and is no longer thinking about what the impact is going to be. And I want to spend some time today just really understanding again what this does for this ball club. The reason this is taking so long is because the contract is complicated, but that does not change the fact that this is a guy that has never had this particular injury impact him throughout his MLB career, dates back to the minor leagues, and he has not had a lower leg injury keep him, off the field. It's been rib stuff, it's been back stuff. It has not been that leg. So with that cast aside here, you are talking about a player who has had an unbelievable career and will be a top 5 third baseman in baseball. Over at Just Baseball right now, I am going through the process of ranking the top 10 at each position. So first base, second base, shortstop, third base. We're doing corner, outfield, center fielders, catchers, DH, all that good stuff. Now, I'm having a hard time trying to do this until we know where Correa lands, because he's either a top 5 shortstop in baseball or potentially a top 5 third baseman. There's a little bit more competition actually at third base because you got Manny Machado, you got Nolan Arenado, you got Rafael Devers, you got Jose Ramirez, you got Alex Bregman. But with that said, if we go based on the offense last season, weighted runs created plus is a stat that I always go back to. It is the best metric out there to just give us an overall all-encompassing idea of who are the best hitters in baseball, because it measures hitters based on a league average of 100. It factors in parks, and it factors in, on base percentage, slugging percentage, all the different metrics you want to look at rolled up into one. So based on WRC+, Carlos Correa was 40% better than your league average hitter, a 140 WRC+. That trails only Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, Yandy Diaz, Austin Riley, and Rafael Devers last season. Actually puts him ahead of Jose Ramirez and Alex Bregman. Now, only Yandy Diaz had a better on-base percentage than Carlos Correa when it comes to third baseman. He was over 400. Beyond that, though, you had Machado and Bregman each had an identical 366 on-base percentage that Correa put up. Slugging percentage, 467, would have been 7th best for Correa. His average of 291 would have been 5th best. Defensively, I think you look at Brian Hayes, you look at Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado, and maybe Matt Chapman as the only third baseman that would maybe be ahead of Correa defensively. And we still haven't gotten the chance to see him play the position outside of a really impressive display in the World Baseball Classic a couple years back. You're going to get incredible third base defense. You're going to get a bat that can slide into the middle of your lineup, who can get on base at a good clip, who can hit for a high average, which I do like when you have a team around them that's getting on base, because as great as a walk is with a runner on first and second, it's better to get a knock and drive in that runner from second to come on and score. So if it's Correa batting third, if Correa is batting fifth to back up Alonso, wherever he is in the lineup, he is a big upgrade over an Eduardo Escobar, for example. So that's huge for this team. And you look towards a future without Correa, solidifying for third base is not as easy as you would think. I did a podcast last week, I believe, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, how the Mets were in a win-win situation with or without Carlos Correa, because they still have Brett Beatty in place. Their lineup last year was top 5, and they're bringing that lineup back. And they could have gotten by with one more year of Eduardo Escobar as a bridge to hopefully get Beatty to assume that position. And if not them, next offseason, there's a couple of big free agents. Well, one of those free agents is now off the board, and that's what I want to talk about next. Rafael Devers signs a big contract, and that should make you just that much more comfortable in the idea of Correa being a Mets third baseman for a long time. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. BetOnline is always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. The NFL playoffs are upon us, so if you want to bet on who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to win each individual playoff matchup, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So the Boston Red Sox finally got it done. They lock up one of their homegrown stars, signing Rafael Devers to an 11-year, $331 million contract. They had to do it after losing Bogarts, losing Mookie Betts years before. You just couldn't let Devers walk out the door. Their fan base would have just rioted, and it was very important that they make sure they lock him up, and so they sign him to a deal that's a lot of money. And when you think about Devers as a player for 11 years, now granted, he's 26, right? So younger than Correa. But then you think about Carlos Correa on a 12-year, $315 million deal, and you think about the average annual value being, $5 million-ish less, and the fact that, Correa could be coming to the Mets on an even better contract. This might end up being a really good deal for the Mets. Now, granted, we know there's this injury that's out there, but I would find it hard to believe that we would get this far down the road of 2 weeks of ironing out a contract, and the Mets aren't going to have protection on that. So if you cast that aside and you just think about who's going to be the better player for the next decade here, I mean, Correa's defense just gives him that automatic edge. Now, Devers could be the better hitter, and probably will be the better hitter over the life of that deal. But if Correa is 80% of the hitter that Devers is, and Devers is half of the fielder that Correa is, well, I think there's a pretty good chance that you're getting a lot of value from the third base position. And beyond that, Devers is now off the board. So if you were trying to solidify the third base position for a decade beyond this year, and you don't have Correa, it's Manny Machado or bust. He still has to opt out of his contract, and who knows where he's signing. Are the Padres just going to bring him back? Is he opting out? They're going to move Bogarts to third, Tatis back to short, and that's really their long-term plan here. And Machado is on the open market, in which case, yeah, maybe Machado would be a better fit because he's healthier than Correa would. At the same time, how much money does Machado get? Machado goes up and puts another top 5 MVP season up. Is he looking at the original Correa deal? Is he looking at 13 years, 350? It's possible. So that's the thing here, is trying to find a third baseman of the future is not easy. Now, Brett Baty could be the guy, but I think where we're at with Brett Baty here is you're just trying to find a position for him to survive that, and the bat's going to carry his value. I don't think anyone was expecting Brett Baty to become a Gold Glove type third baseman. I actually had spoke with Aram Layton about this. He's obviously one of the best prospect analysts out there. I talked to him a few weeks ago on this show. He does our top 100 over at Just Baseball. I spoke about his scouting report on Baty on the episode last week. Or maybe that was Monday. Jeez. Time is just, I don't know at this point. The Correa news has me all twisted up. Or lack of news, I guess I should say. Anyway, when I spoke with Aram about Baty's defense, and I said, does this change your thoughts about him as a prospect? If he's the left fielder instead of a third baseman? He said, no, not really at all. He said it was basically just find a position that he can survive at. That's exactly what he was saying. So I think there's just as good of a chance that he can survive out in left field and bring a lot of value with his bat there than he could at third base. And it's better to have both of them in place. So all of this is to say that the Mets wanted to get this done. Steve Cohen really, really wanted this final piece. On yesterday's show, I spoke about what's left on the market. There is not a single free agent, and there's not even a combination of 3 free agents probably, that can bring you the value next season that Carlos Correa could. So hopefully this gets done very soon, and the Mets can move on with their offseason from there. And part of that could be making a trade to clear up one of their infielders. I'll discuss that next, but first, another word from our sponsors. Now, along with the reporting from Ken Rosenthal that came out about Carlos Correa likely signing with the Mets on a deal that's a little bit different than the one, or drastically different, I think was the reporting, than the one he originally signed, there was also some stuff in there about a trade following with Eduardo Escobar or Luis Guillorme on the move. I really believe that Escobar is the guy to be traded here for a couple of different reasons. One, to clear some money off the books. That helps the Mets. But also, if you think about what's on the market right now, if I'm a team and I'm trying to get a third baseman in the mix, Eduardo Escobar is a lot better than my options. You know, you have Elvis Andrus, you have Josh Harrison, guys that were pretty good with the White Sox, granted, but about average players. Escobar, granted, could be in a similar conversation, but what he brings that neither of them does is 20 home run pop. So I think that there are teams out there that will look at Eduardo Escobar and say, yeah, we could really use him. And with that, the Mets could get a piece back, whether that is a prospect, whether that is a couple of lottery tickets that are younger, that can fill out your system, whether that is a reliever, or maybe you get a little more starter depth, that you can throw on your 40. There's a lot of different things the Mets could potentially get back, but they would clear $10 million, and I can see a lot of suitors being there for Escobar. Guillorme, on the other hand, I don't know what his trade value is. I don't know if there's teams out there that are looking at Guillorme that see the defense and think that's our starting second baseman. If so, maybe you get a package better than I would anticipate. But really, I just don't see the Mets trading Guillorme because I think Guillorme is just too damn valuable to them. With Correa in place, what is Eduardo Escobar's role? Right-handed half of a DH platoon with Daniel Vogelbach? Backup third baseman? Okay, so let's say you trade Guillorme in this instance. Jeff McNeil goes down first month of the season. Knock on wood, but let's just say this happens, and you lose McNeil for a couple of months. Now you got Eduardo Escobar playing second base, a position he's not as familiar with recently. He's been playing a lot more third. He graded out poor defensively at third base last year, and that was with the advent of the shift. You lose the shift, now you're playing with Eduardo Escobar and Pete Alonso on the same side of the infield. Your defense just got significantly worse. And offensively, you go from Escobar or McNeil to Escobar, the profile of your lineup changes. Now, let's say Escobar is moved, and you still have Guillorme. All right, Jeff McNeil goes down. Your defense, if not stays the same, gets better. And obviously, he's not a Jeff McNeil. He's not a batting title champion. But Luis Guillorme is going to get on base. He's going to have really good at-bats. He's going to see a lot of pitches. And if he's in your 8-hole or your 9-hole, I still think that he is an above-average hitter for that spot. Last year, he posted a 106 WRC+. For his career, 101. He's been a league average hitter. A guy that's going to get on base over a 350 clip and will grind out of bats and, again, will play exceptional defense. He gives you coverage at shortstop. So let's just say Carlos Correa really is come into his own at third base. Maybe if Lindor, gets hit in the hand or something or is out for a week, you don't want to move Correa off that position. And you'd rather put Guillorme out there and keep Correa rolling at third. Maybe you just need to give Lindor a day, and instead of moving Correa off third base for that day, you have Guillorme out there. If Correa goes down, who's going to be your third baseman? Now, that's the one instance where maybe you want Escobar more, but defensively, Guillorme is going to fill right where Correa leaves off. And again, I think the bat's okay. So he just makes more sense on this team. And really, I think when you think about the composition of your bench, it gives you so much more flexibility to move pieces around, to feel confident that you can start Guillorme at second base and give Cannon a day, move McNeil out to left field. Having Guillorme allows you to use McNeil a little more flexibly. So, and also Buck Showalter loves Guillorme. So I just don't see that trade happening. I think if Correa ends up coming here, I imagine Escobar gets traded. I could see Darren Ruff getting traded. I could see the Mets maybe signing an outfielder. And then you could even open the door for someone like a Vientos to make the team. I mean, there's a lot more maneuverability that you can go with if you have a Correa in place and if you keep Luis Guillorme. That's going to be all, though, for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Maybe tomorrow's show we'll have some resolution on Correa. Otherwise, I'm going to have Jordan Grossman on. We're going to be talking prospects. We will be breaking down which surprise prospects could actually play a big role in the Mets next season. It'll be a fun show. So make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube so you don't miss any episodes. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by Lindsey Crosby. Locked On MLB Prospects is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on when it comes to the stars of tomorrow in Major League Baseball. You follow Locked On MLB Prospects on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts.